So Nintendo Switch 2 has actually changed everything for your entire Switch 1 library, and this is just a great news report across the board. Not day and night difference in every game's case, but there was this big debate online about how Nintendo Switch 2 would be running Switch 1 games that aren't on Nintendo's free upgrade list, because you might remember that we did get a little list of games that were coming with patches that even Nintendo themselves confirmed better frame rate and better resolution, HDR support in some cases, and while a lot of the games that are not on that patch list are not going to get those type of noticeable large-scale improvements, there is actually quite a few new discoveries of a lot of different games that had performance issues on the Nintendo Switch 1 just truly working better and taking advantage of the extra horsepower in the Switch 2, in addition to some updates around the backwards compatibility list. And this thing's going a lot quicker than maybe some people were expecting, so I want to break down all of the exact info. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here, and stick around for a quick word from today's video sponsor. If you want to level up your game with the ultimate protection for your Switch 2, today we're checking out two of the best, Mumba and Supcase. Let's start with Mumba. The blade and clear case are all about durability and comfort. You get a solid one-piece design, ergonomic grip, and quick detached Joy-Con access, plus they're fully dock friendly. And if you travel a lot, the Mumba carrying case has you covered there, because with its 360 degrees EVA protection, 12 game card slots, and a soft velvet interior, it's built to move when you do. And next you want to look at the Supcase Switch 2 case, which has you covered with foldable Joy-Con protection, a dock-friendly build, and premium German Bayer materials that resist dust, yellowing, and fingerprints. With military-grade drop protection, an anti-slip textured grip, and a sleek modern look, it's ready for your next big gaming session anywhere or anytime. So please help support the brands that support me and check out both Mumba and Supcase in the pinned comment and description down below, and level up your Switch 2 protection today. Big thank you to Mumba and Supcase for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so I want to start this off right over at Go Nintendo, where you can see the following write-up. Switch 2 improves multiple Switch titles Nintendo hasn't even mentioned. New video added, time to switch over. And there are a ton of great experiences available on Switch 2 right now at launch. That includes brand new games, ports from other platforms, upgraded Switch games, and more. It's that last genre of games that's worth digging into a bit more, as the situation is actually much deeper than anticipated. Nintendo revealed that a number of Switch titles would run and look better on Switch 2, but the truth is that there's many more titles that benefit than was first expected. That includes a litany of games that haven't even received updates, some of which have been patch-free for years. Still, bringing them over to Switch 2 shows markedly improved experiences. It'll likely be weeks, if not months, before we know the true extent of how much better some of these Switch titles perform on Switch 2. That's because gamers are discovering these improved experiences on their own, as Nintendo and third parties haven't made a peep. That said, we do have some insight into a handful of titles that have gotten a nice bump on the Switch 2. So, Smash Bros. Ultimate, it has been talked about that there are now improved loading speeds, noticeable quicker startup times in between matches and just booting into the game and things like that. Bayonetta 3 runs at 60 FPS, which this is a game I even brought up in the past, because Bayonetta 3, if you played it right at launch on the Switch 1 or even after launch, they never really had a patch that fixed it, it would dip down beneath 60 regularly. And this game is one that runs at an unlocked frame rate, which is, the cap is at 60, so now with the Switch 2's additional power, it's just able to utilize that extra power and crank it to 60. If a game is not have an unlocked frame rate and it's designed to run at 30 FPS, you're not going to get it to run 60 without some kind of performance patch on the Switch 2. But Bayonetta 3 is a good one to see on this list, because that was one that was very problematic for people right after it launched. Batman Arkham Knight, that's another game that really tested the original Switch, and it runs now at a steady 30 FPS with no performance patch. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity uses an uncapped frame rate, letting the title run much better on Switch 2. And then you have Witcher 3 runs at a steady 30 FPS. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl has improved loading speeds. Animal Crossing New Horizon has improved loading speeds in multiple areas. And then they go on to say, we'll keep tabs and all of this. And there's plenty of different footage that you can absolutely hop into if you would like. But, you know, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty, but the takeaways and the details that you probably want to know is that games that once struggled on the Switch 2, you can just see a literal side-by-side comparison here from Batman Arkham Knight. They're just not having the kind of frame dips that they used to on Switch 2, which is definitely a good news situation all across the board, because you don't want to have choppy performance in any gameplay experience. And then you do have this comparison on the loading times, and we're seeing this on many different games. It's not to say that every single game across the board is going to be noticeably better like this, but look at the 58-second load time that's totally done on Switch 2 for Animal Crossing, and we are at 1:20 and counting before that even starts to load up for the Switch 1. So we're talking about shaving off, in this case, maybe over 30 seconds of actual load time there. So noticeable, to say the least. So there is a reason now to go back and play, quite a few different things on your original Switch. And I guess the point that they actually got to on Animal Crossing that they were tracking there actually ended up being 1:53, if you can believe that. So we're talking about almost a full minute shaved off of the load time in this particular case. And then you do have some other articles and headlines just saying Digital Foundry Nintendo Switch games do run better on Nintendo Switch 2. Again, these are separate from the games that Nintendo's choosing to update, because we did actually already see a list of free game updates, some of Nintendo's more notable titles, lots of different stuff being talked about. In fact, VGC even having some articles about here's how Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom run on the Switch 2. There's a ton of different footage out there that you can go, research and look at yourself. But basically, those frame dips that were a problem in those games are just a thing of the past now, and they're even taking advantage of a higher resolution with the Nintendo Switch 2, which is really nice. This is some Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury footage. So we expected a lot of these ones that were on the free games updates to be supported, but in terms of the other games that just have had no talk from Nintendo, that's what's really interesting here, because patch or not, we are seeing noticeable improvements, which is, when you don't pay additional for them and they're just running better at the end of the day, that's awesome. But I do think the more games that do get a performance patch, a true one, to take advantage of the Switch 2, the better. And that's something that I do believe we will see Nintendo continue to work on, especially from a first party perspective. I think third parties will go back and do their more popular games that maybe continue to have a user base. We've seen some stuff about No Man's Sky just getting all of the free updates for Nintendo Switch 2, and it's literally like a different game in terms of quality now. So there's, if you have a broad library that you transferred over of your Switch 1 games to your Switch 2, there's reason to go back through some of those, especially if you had ones that really just turned you off from the experience because of the overall performance of the game. And then you do have a number of games that Nintendo didn't really mention any performance patches, but that were updated, because you can see this next article from VGC, which says a number of first party Switch games are getting patches to run properly on Switch 2. Separate from the free upgrades, other titles are getting fixes to ensure backwards compatibility works correctly. And this kind of dovetails us into our next conversation about where backwards compatibility is at right now. But just to kind of highlight some games first, there's several different games outside of the ones that were listed for the free upgrades, like Kirby Star Allies, Kirby's Dream Buffet, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Mario 3D All-Stars, a game that has not seen a patch in a long time, got one for the Switch 2. There is still some, I don't know how much better that game's realistically running, and it ran pretty good on the original Switch, but not like HDR and up-res resolution and all of that stuff, but there's some games that just mysteriously got patched all of a sudden whenever the Switch 2 released. Mario Wonder being in that conversation as well, and that's one that I really hope Nintendo enables the HDR support for, goes to 4K 60 for the docked gameplay experience. Like, that is absolutely something that I would anticipate them doing at some point. It's the last 2D mainline Mario game that we've seen them release. It never got DLC. So here's hoping, that realistically could be something we would see Nintendo do. And now the very last thing I want to highlight is just how much more progress has been made on Nintendo's backwards compatibility list, because it was updated again as of June 5th, and you can now see almost the entirety of the chart we've looked at a few different times on the channel is under this blue code, which is no issues found during basic compatibility testing. Includes titles where functionality may differ from Nintendo Switch, but progression is not effective, or issues have now been resolved or are planned to be resolved. So basically, out of the mass majority of not only first party Nintendo, which they've already pretty much outlined and fixed everything that they need to in terms of compatibility from a first party perspective, and there's only those very few games like your Ring Fit Adventure that certain things are not going to work, or especially Labo that's not going to be compatible with the Switch 2 because of the form factor of the console. But there is such a small minuscule amount of partner games now that it really has come down a lot from what we saw pre-launch, because while there is still some one-offs where issues are being investigated, the list has shrunk down dramatically from what it was. So we'll have to watch and see what Nintendo continues to do. The last quick thing I was gonna shout out as well is, like, some games, you know, if you played them on Switch 1, I'm not a Fortnite player myself, but I know it's one of the biggest free games out there on the platform. You might want to go back in, similar to No Man's Sky, and experience like a whole different game, because you even have this where it's like Fortnite Switch 2 improvements detailed, including mouse support and enhanced visuals. The game will now run at 60 frames per second on Nintendo's handheld, and the big high points: 60 frames per second, 1224p resolution when docked, and 900p resolution when handheld, greater view distance, higher quality textures, shadows and water rendering, clothing physics, enabled replay system, the ability to capture video clips using the capture button, game chat allowing players to stream your Fortnite gameplay with up to 3 other friends, full desktop rendered, high detail geometry, distance field ambient occlusion in docked mode, shadow casting, point lights, and high quality effects and mouse controls. So quite honestly, a different experience entirely than what Fortnite was in the past on the Switch up to this point in time. So in my opinion, this is a huge win for all of us. At the end of the day, we know backwards compatibility was going to be there, and that's been confirmed for a long time, obviously. However, when you have a reason to go back and check out some of your favorite games on the Switch 2 from your Switch 1 library of games, and you didn't have to pay anything or do anything extra to take advantage of some noticeable performance improvements, that's great news to me at the end of the day. So let me know in the comments down below if you yourself have noticed any performance upgrades from your Switch 1 library of games, and are there any that you are planning to go back to in light of this news to actually investigate and check out firsthand yourself. So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.